So this is obviously a collaboration event between OU Femtech and the Psychedelic Society. And although lots of you have heard of the latter, I don't know if any of you have heard of the former. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of an introduction to what is Femtech before we move on to our wonderful speakers. If I can, screen share. Cool. So historically, women have been excluded from medical research for they have been deemed to be too complex, which has led to a massive gap in the data that we have for men and women in terms of healthcare. So this is a major issue because if the healthcare system is built for men, obviously it's not going to serve women as well. So the term Femtech was created in 2016 by a female entrepreneur named Ida Tin, who started Clue, which is a period tracker app. So basically this just refers to any services or products that are built to serve and solve problems to do with women's health issues. So here we can see a graphic that was created by Ultraviolet, which is a Femtech prediction agency. And Femtech actually spans a really wide range of different functionalities. So all the way from hybrid health and telemedicine into radical inclusivity and wealth economy. So basically using healthcare solutions to try and fix the pay gap, for instance. And as we can see, obviously Femtech companies are springing up in a multitude of different areas, but we do still have these vacuums where we have no solutions. And so people here maybe are more from the Psychedelic Society and will know that kind of psychoactive and hallucinogenic substances have been used by Indigenous people for millennia. But kind of in this recent resurgence and kind of scientific research, we've had many of the narratives built around kind of a Western and a white, mainly male framework, which is a major issue. So in this talk, we really want to explore how we can use CBD and psychedelics to solve these women's health issues. And to that, we have our wonderful speakers, and I'll pass over to Selma for an introduction.
So the way the talk will work is we'll have two speakers. So unfortunately, Valentina from Daye, who gave us wonderful CBD tampon samples, is stranded in the airport, so she won't be able to join. But she will join at a later date, hopefully this term or maybe next term. But we will still have two wonderful speakers, Akua, who's here with us, and Sophia, who's online, which she's here. We'll put her in the front spot later. So both of them will give a brief introduction or presentation of what they do, and then we'll have a general Q&A. So I'll start by introducing Akua Ofosuhene, who's here. So 5 years ago, Akua found out that her teenage son had been groomed into the county lines of drug dealing while at school. Akua learned about psychedelic medicines, alternative healing modalities, and African spirituality as well. And by putting these together, she was able to treat her depression and eventually get her son out of the drug dealing ring. Today, Akua advises people dealing with the effects of grooming and mind control, as well as assisting on intention setting, integration, and practical ways of embedding the learnings from psychedelic trips into everyday life. Akua works full-time as a tailor. She's the founder of the African Spiritual Practices event in London and the co-founder of the Health Plus Culture Artisans Cooperative Shop.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me at the back. Can you hear me? A little bit higher. Okay. Okay. Hi. Yeah, my name is Akua Ofosuhene, and like Selma said in the introduction, really up until 5 years ago, I hadn't actually touched any kind of a drug since the 90s, and yeah, I wasn't really interested at all. But I came back to the UK from living in Ghana. I'd moved out to Ghana when my son was 8, and I didn't want to bring up a Black boy in this society. I just thought he'd have a much better life back in Ghana, and we had a really nice life. But then my mum got sick in this country, and we ended up coming back, and we thought we were coming back for 3 months. Our operation went wrong, and suddenly we were here for years. And I didn't realize, but I'd started to become depressed because my life in Ghana was lovely. I had 2 shops. My son was in private school. And I came back to the UK and we're in a council house, and suddenly I'm a carer and my son's going to a local academy school. And I realized when the police turned up at our house one day that my son had gone from being moved up a year in his English class and being this super student to we'd found him with a knife, and his friend was found with drugs around the back of where we live. So it was just like this huge nightmare in one go. And it took a while to get over the shame, to start looking for alternative ways to help, because we were approaching the police, social services, all the stuff that you're supposed to do. And what I realized was none of these agencies were actually set up to change the brain. And that's what I needed. I needed my brain changed. I needed a new brain to deal with this situation. And my son needed a new brain to get out of the situation that he found himself in. So I just went to Google and YouTube, and I just found loads of different modalities, tapping, faster EFT. Normally EFT was not fast enough, but there's actually another one called faster EFT, which is brilliant. It just takes you from whatever you're feeling to what you want to do really quickly. Found out about Cambo, frog medicine, where they burn the tops of your skin and they put this frog medicine in, and you just kind of have this huge detox, psychological and physical. I learned about attachment parenting, because I learned that my son had unattached from me and had attached to his peers. So I had to quickly learn about how to start to get him to reattach, which is really difficult when your son is actually calling you an effing C to your face, and you're having to learn a new way of communicating. So I learned non-violent communication, because I really did want to be very violent towards him. So we learned how to speak again. And in all of that, I was still trying to find something to change both of our brains. And I'd heard about ayahuasca, but I didn't know anybody anymore who could get hold of any drugs at all. So I think I Googled African ayahuasca, because I thought, well, if there's something African, maybe I can, through my networks of arts and crafts in Ghana and stuff, maybe I can get something. So I heard about Iboga, and I knew they were using it as ibogaine for addiction and things. And eventually I found a really lovely old white woman who was actually serving Iboga. So I went and I did Iboga, and I always say it was like, it gave me a new spine to be able to deal with the situation, because all the time I'm building up my relationship with my son, he's getting further and further into this world. So he's gone from sort of not coming in till 7 o'clock at night. Now he's not coming in till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then he was starting to disappear and would just turn up whenever he wanted. But Iboga just, it was like, yeah, you have a new spine. This is the woman you need to be to deal with this situation in your life. And it took away the shame. I'm a parent of just one child. And as soon as you start talking about your child being involved in drug selling, then the first thing everybody wants to say is there's no men around. All these other parents are very happy when their kids turn up with new trainers and money. And it's really difficult to say, actually, my son turns up with fuck all. You know, and there's so many men around. And we had 2 millionaires take my son into their lives to try and turn it around, and it didn't work because it wasn't really about money. He was under somebody else's control. And that was the thing that made me realize even more I needed something to change his brain. And I was lucky enough to find a woman called Daye, who talks about how being in a gang is the same as being in a cult. And when I read her book and I saw how you get somebody out of a cult, I kind of, by then, I realized that, okay, I needed to practice what she was doing with psychedelics as well to be able to get my son out. But although he was a drug dealer, he didn't actually believe in taking drugs. So it was really difficult for about 6 to 9 months. And what I started to do was just send him information about all the trials that were going on, all the scientific trials into all the different drugs and everything. And he would be reading them while selling, I think they were mostly heroin and crack was what he was selling, but he would be reading about psilocybin and MDMA and all of this stuff. And when I knew our relationship was strong enough as parent and child, that's when I made a deal with him. And I said, if you come home and take another medicine, I promise if at the end of it you want to carry on being a drug dealer, I will leave you alone. But I reckon at the end of it, you won't want to be a drug dealer. And I was also, at that time, I'd learned a lot about African spirituality. So I was pouring libation at the crossroads for a legba, who's the road opener. So I would go every Monday and I'd pour libation and I would just pray to a legba, return my son back to me, unhurt, not in prison, not having hurt anybody. And so I made very big demands to the ancestors while doing all of this reading, while all of that stuff was going on. And he kept on being picked up by the police every weekend for quite a while. But it was always just after the drugs had gone or just after the money had been taken. So I knew it was like, okay, ancestors, you're really, really working for me. And I found a brilliant hoodoo/voodoo priest in South Africa who was also helping, really bringing on a lot of deities, sea deities also to help, really, really powerful deities. And one day when he was kind of like, soon I won't be coming home, maybe only once a month, Mum, you know, I'm going to hit the big time and all of this stuff. Then they found out that the police were actually going to come to the house that they were in. And I just managed to get really, really good MDMA, and I'd managed to source some magic mushrooms. So everything was set at home for whenever he was going to come. So he agreed to come. Well, he wasn't going to come home, but because of what was happening, he had to come home. So straight away, everything was ready. I didn't tell him that the first medicine was MDMA, because if he'd known it was MDMA, he wouldn't have taken it. He'd said yes to the mushrooms, but I knew he wouldn't take anything that he felt was man-made. So I body tested myself how much to give him, because I didn't know how much to give him, but there was a brilliant book by a guy called Coleman, Psychedelic Psychotherapy, and he talked about breaking trauma with MDMA and then followed by psilocybin. So that's when I decided to go with. So my body test said to give him 0.5 gram of MDMA. So that's what I gave him. And I just thought, fuck it, nothing can be worse than what we're dealing with. And he, you know, within an hour, he was spilling his guts, telling the truth about what had happened, how he'd been groomed, how sorry he was. He started phoning the family because everybody knew what I was doing. So he started phoning them all, you know, I'm really, really sorry. I remember you did this, and he was crying. So I kind of knew that, okay, this, you know, he'll come out the other side and hopefully this will be finished. He did come out the other side the next morning, and he was pretty sure that he didn't want to do it anymore. But I wasn't super convinced, because I knew that, you know, once a few days goes by, so then we hit it with the psilocybin, 5 grams, because I thought it's got to be quite a big punch to really make a big difference. And it was. He cried for 6 hours, and I could just feel this, you know, this grief. There was a lot of grief that came out, and that was it. You know, our 3-4 years of this nightmare was over in a weekend. But I also realized that it wasn't a one and done, because over time, then things start to creep back in, everything that he'd seen, everything that he'd done, the lack of confidence, how he felt he'd let everybody down. So we carried on, and we're still actually, I mean, he stopped about 2.5 years ago, and we're still working with the psilocybin about every 3 or 4 months. And at the moment, 2 years ago, he chose to move back to Ghana because it wasn't safe for him to be where we were because of how he'd come out. You know, he was supposed to come home for a day, and then he's like, I'm not coming back to you guys to sell drugs anymore. So it wasn't safe for him, but luckily lockdown happened about the same time. So as soon as they lifted the borders, he chose to go back to Ghana, and he's managed to go back into education now. But it's really been the magic mushrooms that really worked on his psyche, so that he can start to learn again. And now we're at the point where he's actually talking about work. So I'm going to Ghana in December because we're going to do a really big dose to just kind of get him over that hurdle of, his confidence really coming back. So that's kind of like what got me into psychedelics. And then since then, I help parents and people who found themselves in various kinds of mind control situations. And really, but my biggest thing is about intention setting, how important intention setting is. Because if you don't have a strong intention, then you won't really understand the trip. And so to work out how to integrate that trip and how to come up with a list of the work that you can keep doing after the trip is, I think, the most fundamental thing. Otherwise, you take the medicines, you get this really amazing, oh, wow, I feel really good for a week. And then it starts to go down because you haven't hit the ground running. So as I was saying to you, you know, I've just done only my second big trip of the year, and suddenly I'm on time for everything and I'm a bit early. And that was one of the things that was on my list of intentions. So now, because I'm in that first week, everything is like super, super, super mad full on, because I know in about 2 weeks' time, it will start to slide. But if I've gone forward 10 steps, I'll only come back 5. And that's the thing I really talk to people about, is how to use these medicines to keep going forward and not just sort of lolling about. So I am a bit strict. I think I've done that.
Thank you so much, Sophia. We'll leave the questions for afterwards when we hear all the speakers, but please prepare the questions. Just before I introduce Sophia, I will still introduce Valentina, even though she can't be with us today. Yes. So Valentina Milanova is the founder of Daye. You might have seen the products we have in the back. So she's the founder of Daye. It's a gynae health research and development company on a mission to close a gender pain gap and overcome historical gender biases in medical research and product innovation. After years of research and testing, Daye launched its first consumer product in 2020, the world's first and only cramp-soothing tampon. From the outset, Valentina has baked her core values into the DNA of the company. Daye's products are manufactured by women who used to be in the prison system, and all Daye products are produced in a fully carbon-neutral operation. Born and raised in Bulgaria, Valentina moved to the UK to attend the University of Buckingham, where she got degrees in business, economics, and law. After working in the econometrics and policy, Valentina soon found herself drawn in by the startup world. Working first at Techstars and then as a venture associate for Founders Factory. Meanwhile, she began working on her own idea for a company. And after 180 pitches to investors, Valentina managed to raise 4.23 million in seed funding. In late 2018, they started officially changing the face of female health for the better. So hopefully I'll come back to hear Valentina in a few minutes. Now let me introduce Sophia. Stop sharing.
Yes.
Sophia. Yes, awesome. Good to see her on screen. So Sophia is a holistic therapist and founder of Awaken Potential and Ayahuasca Now What. She has an honors degree in ancient history and has extensively traveled, studying the mind-body connection and how ancient practices and modern understanding can be fused together to create new holistic healing techniques and modalities. After nearly 3 years living and working in Peruvian Amazon and studying ayahuasca, curanderismo with the Shipibo, she now focuses on helping people integrate their psychedelic experiences to reprogram their subconscious mind and release old emotional baggage and programming from the body-mind to bring about optimum physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health for her clients. Sophia.
Hi. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I was going to start and do this talk about the body-mind connection, but first of all, I wanted to comment on the previous speaker, because that was a fantastic talk. And yeah, just hats off to you for everything you did for yourself and your son. It was very, very touching. And also what you're doing with psychedelics right now and psilocybin is something that, from my experience in the Amazon, is really, really important. That phase you talked about with once you've taken the psychedelic and had the breakthrough in the experience, and you've had the first few days are so important in taking notes and making sure you understood what it meant then. And then you've got the whole integration phase coming where the lessons expand and evolve. They've also done studies with ayahuasca where they've realized there's actual neuroplasticity for about 4 to 6 weeks, and that's like the afterglow period. So if you imagine the psychedelics doing a hack and slash through a jungle, if you're cutting through a pathway, you create a new path during the process. And then in order to keep being able to walk that path instead of the highway that's been there forever, you have to prune it. So you keep walking that path, keep practicing, making sure you embody those practices, and then the neuroplasticity can kick in and you can actually stay on the new road rather than the old one. So yeah, just wanted to speak to that first, because it's vitally important what they're doing. And that's why I set up Ayahuasca Now What, because there's so many people who get addicted to the ceremony space, get addicted to the actual breakthroughs and emotion and like the ayahuasca afterglow, and then don't do any work. And so it's just really important to prepare, set your intentions, know why you're going, what you're planning to do. These substances are precious, especially the natural ones. Peyote is endangered. Ayahuasca is kind of getting that way. And so it's really important to honor those medicines and use them well. And then afterwards, know what you're doing, so you're not just stuck in a loop and then think you're even more broken, actually, because you've had such a wonderful experience and feel amazing. And then the patterns creep back in, the old insecurities, and then it can be even worse because you think you're broken and nothing can fix you. And so that can be even more damaging and traumatic than if you never did it at all. So another thing, or what I do mainly in my practice now, is a modality called Psych-K, which is another piece of being able to change the subconscious mind, shift these old beliefs and programs, and really biohack this wonderful technology that we have, which is the human body. We talk about technology and science and sort of new things, but we have the most amazing machine with us all the time, and it's split into different components. We have the physical body, the mental, the emotional, and the spirit. And unfortunately, in Western culture, we split those into different compartments and somehow think they're not interrelated, at least in a medical sense. And that causes so many disasters for our health and well-being. So also just the word health, most people think of the idea of physical health as the instant go-to. now, post-COVID era, we also think of mental health a lot more, and that's becoming more of a conversation that no one would have thought mental health, about 50 years ago. It's really something that we're only understanding now as a part of our general health. And then spiritual health, I still don't think people talk about that a lot, where we see our place in the wider universe and how that might affect us and our beliefs and our programs. So the work of a holistic therapist or any of these modalities is to understand again that we are made up of all those things. And there's dialogue between the physical body and the emotions and vice versa. Everyone knows if we've got menstrual cramps, we're going to be pretty crabby because we're in pain. It's one of those things. We're just not feeling right. And so we act differently. It's logical. But the same goes the other way. If we start feeding negative thoughts or listening to thoughts that just pop in and believing them, because that's an issue. Once when we were 5, someone told us we were stupid, and the subconscious mind is a record and playback mechanism. So it says, oh, you're stupid. And many people might have told you the opposite, but part of you, a tiny part, will play that bit back in a situation where you did something that you think silly. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm stupid, and you go into the spiral. And that affects the emotions, which affect the chemicals in your body, which affect your physical health. And so both the physical affects the emotional and vice versa. And some doctors would say that about 98% of all illness is stress related. So the idea of the body-mind, body, mind, and spirit all being very, very important, and the emotions having a critical role in our health is quite a valid statement. Also speaking a bit more to the Shipibo medicine paradigm, something else I'd like to mention is that ayahuasca is just one component of it. They use the whole jungle pharmacopoeia, and actually ayahuasca is really just the tool that they use in ceremony to see what's happening with their patients. The Shipibo particularly are doctors who happen to work with spirits. And so in the ceremony, they're looking at their patients and trying to find the roots of the illness. Because, for example, if you just cut this tree off at the branches here, the branches will regrow. And that's another thing that Western medicine, as good as it is in many areas, often tries to suppress symptoms and just cut branches. But the problem is things shoot out from elsewhere. So what the Shipibo paradigm does is try and pull it out from the roots. And often the shamans see in ceremony that the roots are emotional trauma, 99% of the time. Even if there was a physical trauma combined with that, it's the emotional piece that seems to be the most important to heal in order for physical health to change. So what Psyche seeks to do is create a state called a whole brain state. So back in the day when they were studying NLP or coming up with the idea of neuro-linguistic programming, they put people in MRI scanners and got them to think of their phobias, and they saw that one hemisphere of the brain would jam. And so what they learned how to do is different technologies of just crossing the midline of the body, doing things like that. There's EMDR, which moves the eyes whilst thinking about and focusing on the traumatic event. Actually allows the two hemispheres to rewire and integrate, and actually you're no longer stuck in a pure logic response and going cold, or a pure emotional response and going hysterical. And so it's a really cool way of just rewiring the brain. And I find that post-psychedelics, it's really helpful for creating that lasting change in terms of the repatterning piece. The psychedelics often show and bring up where the trauma came from and clearing some of the emotional baggage. And then the Psyche, it's like, okay, what do I want to believe instead? What do I want to replace this limiting belief with? So I'm stupid becomes, I know what I need to know. Or if I don't know something, it's okay. Or I'm amazing. You could take it as far as you want and actually get yourself to believe it on all levels of your being. And so I've spoken about the subconscious mind a lot. And The subconscious we could call the body mind. It's that part of us that has a record of every memory, that it's not even a memory consciously, it's the physical memory. So everything that happened when we were babies, every conversation that was happening, because it needs to learn culture, environmental safety and everything, it's just like a sponge. And so it records everything for your whole life. So that's why people have been traumatized a lot when they're tiny, don't have conscious memory, but it can be triggered through things like body work because it's stored in the body mind. And so working on the level of the subconscious, which psychedelics bridge from the subconscious to the conscious to help us release these traumas, is really, really important for overall health. Conscious mind is that mind that we hear talking inside our heads most of the time, the thoughts that we choose to have most of the time. And then there's the superconscious, which could be called the higher self or the spirit or that intuitive voice that said, oh, maybe I should do that, and it's something that doesn't come from a fearful place. It's that voice that just gives us inspiration and guidance rather than that fear place. And that could also be seen as, the body, mind, spirit. And really, I think, for general health and well-being, all of these need to be united for us to be able to make lasting change.
Thank you so much, Sophia. We'll let people ask questions, but I guess we'll start with the first question. I had the chance actually to talk about this with Akua before, is how do these psychedelics, whether it's ayahuasca or other drugs, how do they affect men and women differently? Because there seems to be something different in the use, also the kind of intention when using these. If you can speak a little bit about them.
Yeah, it was nice actually to have that little conversation about it because, when I was coming over and I was thinking about, oh yes, it's femtech, and I was thinking about how these medicines affect men and women differently, and I found that with women, it seems that because we're allowed to be emotionally quite free, it's really good at, helping us deal with our traumas and seeing, getting a wider picture of the world. But with men, I think what I've seen is much bigger changes. And what I've seen, I was saying to you with my little brother, is a personal trainer, very into his body, really into his fashion, is really good looking, tall, and so the world has been kind to him because of his looks, and so he's been a certain type of man, I suppose. But his healing gifts started to come along, and which was a bit of a shock to him because he wasn't that kind of a person. And then he started using psychedelics to understand more about these gifts. And what's been really interesting is seeing how he softened. And I've seen him cry on screen now at least 2 or 3 times when he just talks about the beauty of the heart, which is something, if you'd ever known Yao, it's like you would never imagine him having that conversation with conviction about the beauty of the heart and talking about the divine feminine and the importance of men finding the divine feminine within and women to find the divine masculine within, and all these kind of concepts that, it was, 10 years ago, he would not have been having that conversation. And then meeting more and more young men. When I do African spiritual practices, and you've got quite a few young men who will come and they'll take part in an ancestral veneration ceremony, and they come out and they're happy to come out crying. It's really, it's amazing. I think more men should be out there taking psychedelics, because that's what will really change the world, when the people who are supposedly the ones with power start to actually change. That's really what's going to change things. So yeah, I think that's the biggest difference I've seen, for sure.
Both of you spoke about the role of spirituality in psychedelics. Akua with African spirituality, and Sophia with the Amazonian Shipibo. I'm wondering if you could both speak to how the spiritual and ritualistic aspect of taking psychedelics, taking them within a ceremonial context, improves their effects on health and makes them more therapeutic. Sophia?
Yeah, that's a big question and a really important one. I'm a big advocate in making sure, especially with natural psychedelics, so things like ayahuasca, peyote, San Pedro, need to be taken in a really respectful context with people who are properly trained. Because as I said, the Shipibos are doctors who happen to work with spirit, and spirits are part of the ceremony, whether you believe in them or not. They're present, and you may not have a direct experience with them, but they are definitely there. And when you've been to the jungle and witnessed certain things, it's impossible to doubt. And so without proper training, it's okay until it's not. You know, you can have like 10, 15, 25 ceremonies that are awesome, but if something happens where, you know, something big goes down or the space isn't protected well or something, and everyone in the room is at risk. And so that would be the first thing in terms of doing it in a traditional context or with people who are very well trained and doing it respectfully. In terms of the ritualistic aspect, it's also important to note that the Shipibo shamans aren't spiritual in the way that we would perceive, say, an Indian guru type. You know, they're not about enlightenment. They're not about, you know, transcending space and time and losing the body. Like, they're doctors. They go into the underworld. They pull out your shit. They, like, you know, they're in the deep underrealm. And so it's not about spirituality. There's a lot of strange things with the Shipibo in terms of the Christianization and really mixed paradigms, but they're not really connected to, you know, a lot of people go there and they get quite shocked by how jungle and brutal this paradigm is. And so sometimes it's important for people to take psychedelics in a Western context or in a place where there's Western facilitators, where people understand this psycho-spiritual connection and can language the experience in a way that makes sense to us, because otherwise it can be incredibly terrifying and not make a lot of sense and be almost traumatizing. And so I think it's really important to have, especially the way we're choosing to try and use these substances in terms of for the psychological benefit, for clearing out old traumas and things like that. It's really important to have a team of sort of Western psychologists and people who are trauma informed to be able to help processing and be part of the ceremony space, the preparation and the integration.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I mean, it's a weird thing, because in the beginning, when most people start to work with psychedelics, there's something, you know, I'm depressed, I want to do more of this, I want to be more productive. And then the longer you do it, you just start realizing that there's more to reality than just the 3D world. And I'm starting to see that there are people who seem to have more trips that are always about kind of clearing stuff to do with their lives and their trauma, and maybe like within a few generations. And then there are other people who they seem to have quite big spiritual trips really quickly. And I'm starting to think that there are some people who are maybe, I suppose, maybe a bit more shamanic, just naturally, and the medicine just helps them to find that story. And then other people who are more 3D fixed. But both sides seem to kind of start finding a spiritual path. I come from a long line of healers, but we didn't really know. My mum's sister was a Christian healer, and we were brought up to think that she was the healer. It's only recently, since my brother's gifts came online, that we found out that actually they've been healers going back at least 500 years. But because they weren't Christian, when my mum became Christian healer, nobody talked about the traditional African healers that had always been. So now my brother has the gift, and he's not affiliated with anybody or anything. And so he helps us with meditations and stuff. And now every time I trip, Kali comes, Green Tara comes, and a Jamaican ancestor comes. And my last trip, I realized that what the Jamaican ancestor does is she speaks spells so I can see things clearer. I hadn't worked out that was what she did until this last one, when she was the only one who came through, and I wasn't getting the trip. And it was like she'd speak, and then the clouds would clear, and I'd understand some more. And I spoke to somebody just yesterday who's had her first big trip, and she had a pantheon of ancestors just sit in front of her and tell her loads of stuff about her grandfather, who she never knew, and all of this kind of stuff. And then she got a similar message to what I had very early on, which is, don't come back until you can take more, because then we can speak to you more. And I had that, I think, on my second trip. As I was coming out, I got, don't come back without it being 7.5. And I waited a long time before I took 7.5. And that time coming out, don't come back unless it's 10. And it's like, oh, okay. And so I can see from this young woman, okay, there's a similarity there. So maybe this is also another kind of path. And I think as more people start to work with psychedelics, we're just going to start discovering so many different types of superpowers that we have in this realm and also in the other realms, and the different things that you can actually do in the realms. I was shown how I was poisoning my niece's children's future through my worry, because I was very worried that she had so many children and she was working away from home, and I was always worried and really kind of, you've got to come back to the city, you've got to come back to the city. And I was shown in a trip that this worry were these golden darts, but they were poisonous, and they were going far into her children's future. And it was like, you have power in this realm, and you cannot go around worrying because you're poisoning people's futures. You've got to deal with your shit so you're not putting it on them. And it was really kind of humbling, like, oh, fuck, this is, okay, right, let me not worry. How can I help her? And actually, as soon as I decided not to worry and I looked at her life, it really wasn't as bad as I was making out in my head about her life. And so the medicines they're interesting and profound in the 3D world and in the other realms. And I think the more you use them, you can't help but go those ways. But I've met people who don't want to go those ways, so then they stop setting intentions and they just keep taking the medicines and they keep being poisonous. And I think you really have to have what's that word? Discernment. Who you take medicines with, who you listen to about medicines, how much they're really working on themselves, because you can keep using the medicines, but if you're not doing all the stages, then you're really being poisonous with them. So I always say to people, just look at the life of the person who is talking about the medicines. If everything's falling to bits and they can't see it and people are scared of them and people are running away from them, run to. It's because people working with the medicines, if they're not doing it properly, there'll be a lot of people who've run away from them. And that's enough for you to kind of know whether, they have good intentions or they're just feeding their ego and not doing the work.
I just wanted to follow up on that, Akua, because what you said reminded me about one important facet of health that psychedelics address in a way that many other medicines don't, which is intergenerational trauma. So you spoke, for example, about your niece, and with ayahuasca, one role of the shaman is often to cut the ties imposed on you by your ancestors on your current psyche. So I'm wondering if you could both speak to that, the role of psychedelics in healing intergenerational trauma, especially for women.
So yeah, you're very right that intergenerational trauma is a very real thing. And actually, when I was researching this talk, there's some experiments they've done with mice to look at epigenetic changes. So they would put a scent in the hut, the mice would get electric shocks, and so be conditioned to fear that particular smell. And it was the male mouse, and then they would, for 3 generations, the children or the offspring were afraid of the smell without ever having been shocked. So it just gets passed down the lineage. We get a lot of superpowers passed down too, but as an evolutionary mechanism, it's really important to understand the environment and the difficulties of it. And so we change our genetics to make sure that we're safe, essentially. And this means that, you know, we can get a lot of trauma patterning in our system. And ayahuasca, because it's a pattern interrupt, because it's something that can shift our perspective and actually clear the physiological hormones and chemicals and epigenetics that are in our system, we can actually change and rewrite our DNA, essentially, and release those patterns. And often in ceremony, when those things are big, you know, you'll have a ceremony experience where you yourself are cutting those ties. You know, the shaman can be doing it too, and the plants will be supporting, but you often have those kind of experiences for yourself when you're ready to give it back. You know, these things get passed down through the line in order for somebody to release them, because they have to be dealt with. And at the point where you can say, it's not mine, this doesn't need to be carried anymore, it's no longer serving, you know, because it's almost like some people hang on to an illness, for example, because, you know, if I don't have that issue, it's become so much a part of my identity. Who am I? That the ego freaks out. And it is kind of the same down the generations. Oh, we are strong people, or we are this kind of people. You know, that kind of languaging in a family is the family's ego identity being conditioned by trauma or glory, whatever it is. And so it takes somebody to say, no, this is stopping with me, and give it back. And so ceremony is a great space for it, both the psychological processes that happen in ceremony and also the work that the shaman can do in the other realm and actually, clean up the lineage. And also some of the other modalities I work with, you know, we can use magnets to do that, because everything is made of frequency. And if you've been to a hotel and they've changed the information on a key card, or you've accidentally stuck a magnet in your back pocket with your credit card and wiped the data, you can realize you can change the frequency of information very quickly. And we can do that with everything. This understanding that there's so much more to material reality than we perceive is basically, it is very much like the Matrix. It's all just data. And we can easily hack in and rewrite the data. And the belief that change is difficult and needs to take a long time and struggle is something that we really need to rewrite. And ceremony is a great place for that.
Repeat the question again. I got so.
Speaking of the role of psychedelics in healing intergenerational trauma, especially for women.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting one, because in our family, I suppose because I was the first one, it's spread out in the family, but in lots of different ways. So my mum microdoses because she has a lot of pain and she's on quite a lot of heavy meds. So and she's never tricked in her life. So for her, she doesn't even understand why anybody even calls it a drug, because she's, you know, she doesn't see anything. It just helps her sleep. My big sister microdoses because she gets fluid on her lungs. And I remember one day I was just walking up the stairs, no psychedelics in me, but literally the medicine just said to me, she should microdose at night and her lungs will be better. So I carried on to the top of the stairs and I told my sister, and she microdoses at night, and all her asthma symptoms are gone because she doesn't get this fluid on her lungs anymore. But it's like the intergenerational stuff is really, really interesting, because I feel like in our family, there's myself, my brother, my little sister, who we take bigger doses. And there's definitely conscious work going on. Probably more with myself. So I told you, turning up early just this week, because I had such a big experience with my last trip that was, I've got this shop and I could see there was something with my landlord, such a peculiar guy who's really grasping and greedy, but it's like, okay, we're together, so there's something to learn from this person. But I was thinking, but I'm not greedy, I'm not grasping, so what is it to learn? And in the last trip, I was shown the connection between myself, my landlord, and my father is about looking a certain way to the world. And I was shown this, I mean, it's too big to really go into, but it was just all about the mask, but the creature that gives you the mask, and what the creature gets off you is anxiety about keeping up this appearance, whatever that appearance is. So it was like this slithering creature had all this like electricity coming off of it, and the electricity, when you caught it, gave you a mask. And then society says it's okay to strive, to strive and be ambitious, but in that is a lot of anxiety and angst, and that's what this creature sucks on. And that's what I saw was the connection between myself, my father, and my landlord. It was keeping up of an appearance, and it was so deep and big, this trip. I came out of it and I was like, oh my God, we have to leave our shop, because we're feeding his addiction. Because what the thing also showed me was the end result is you get an addiction because your heart is hurt, because you're not being yourself. You're feeding this mask and your heart is just in pain. So you end up doing whatever you're addicted to. And it showed me our local crackhead who outside of our shop quite often. And it was like, she hasn't got a mask anymore. She's just feeding the creature with the anxiety over getting money for and it was just showing all the different levels of feeding this mask. And it was really hard. Like after, I was like, oh my God, I have to tell all these people we're leaving the shop. We're not, I kept on repeating, I will not feed any addiction, not even my own, because I'd gone in, my intention was, got to sort out my money. I've got to sort out my overeating. And there was a third one. It was money, eating, and time. And I knew there was a connection, but I couldn't work out with my normal brain what the connection was between these three things. In the trip, after I was shown about the mask, and I kept on getting the line, to thine own self be true, to thine own word be true. Make your word your bond, be honorable to your word. Do not lie to people to feed any mask, to feed any addiction. So coming out, it's like, shit, I have to tell 12 people we're leaving the shop. I'm going to have to change everything because I'm not going to do all this stuff. Phoned my sister and she's like, oh my God, I was thinking we have to leave the shop. We can't be here. Talk to the other person. She's like, I'm so pleased you're saying we have to leave the shop. I felt so bad for ages and I couldn't name it. So in the end, everybody's like, yeah, let's fucking go. Let's stop this nonsense. But seeing that thing when I was talking to my siblings, it was really interesting. It's like we all suddenly have woken up from this spell of, I think, my father's greed and heartbreak that's been his whole life, that we were all brought up in. And suddenly it's like, we don't have to pretend to be anything more than we are. And maybe it started way before his line, but at least at the moment we can feel we've broken this big thing. But my brother was like, so now next time you go back in, you deal with the female line. And it's like, okay, I'm up for it. I'm up for it. But I think it's just the medicine. If you go in and you say, I will do anything you tell me to break through whatever the problem is, I will be a warrior. I'll cry my eyes out, but I will be that warrior. I think the medicine just serves you with what it is that you need to do. And if you trust it, it changes everything before you even wake up. I've had that so many times where I just think, shit, how am I going to tell everybody this new realization? Oh my God, they're going to think I'm mad. And you pick up the phone and they're like, yeah, that's a really good idea. And it's like, wow, it feels like it changes the rest of reality around you. Or maybe it just gives you the words so that you can say what is in your heart a lot better. But I think using the medicines, it doesn't take as long as we think to change really, really big things. I don't think it takes that long at all. So I'm a big advocate, get in there.
Great. We'll now take about 10 minutes of questions from the audience.
Well, starting from the fact that, well, thank you very much, both of you. I think it takes a lot of guts to give what are considered drugs rather than medicine to your own child, because you know it's the right thing to do. So how do you balance out the fact that you recognize how important that is, but you also don't want to force it on others, because obviously the person itself has to have faith in the medicine, otherwise there's no point. How do you kind of bring it to them so that they understand how big of a potential it could be for their mental well-being, even trauma and everything else it could be, without invading their own space and chance to understand what's best for them?
Yeah, some people say no. I mean, at the time when I was working on myself with Iboga, my son and two of his friends were groomed at the same time. And one lot of parents, they chose to just leave London, but their son ran away and came back to London, and he's been in and out of prison, and they just didn't get it. What I was talking about, they just didn't get it. His other best friend, his mum was a nurse, and she just could not get over the idea that it was drugs. And her son is now in a psychiatric group home, and she can't work anymore. She's got an enlarged heart. You know, I just feel like all I can do is just say, and I'm not shy about saying it, because I hope that people will feel something so that they'll use it. But in my own experience, so many parents especially find it really difficult to get over the shame. And when I speak to parents, so many of them are kind of like, well, he'll come back next week. And I'm like, no, you've got to work on yourself first, because you've got to become the new parent for the child you now have. And loads of parents, I'll be honest, 8 out of 10 of them do not want to be the new parent their child needs. They just want to, they need it. So I just talk, and if they want to, they want to, and if they don't, they don't.
So like tripping usually, like, so you can sometimes trip by yourself, and that can be a really new experience. But I was just wondering, like, do you think there's ever benefits for maybe like tripping with certain special individuals and going through that experience with them? Is there something different that you can get than if you were kind of like tripping solo, essentially? Like, and I know it can be like mushrooms and like ayahuasca might be very different. So I was just wondering, like, what would be the difference, for example, if you're tripping with somebody? Well, yeah, appreciate it. I know ayahuasca is slightly more like inward. So.
It's really a personal choice. I mean, I would never recommend tripping solo your first time, because it's such an alien experience, and it's worth having an experienced sitter with you who's sober in the space. They might be in a different room with the door open, but just a presence there that you know and trust and love, that loves you unconditionally, that you have a very strong bond with, that no matter what's going on for you, they can be there for you. I have tripped solo with various things, including ayahuasca, because of my training, doing the shamanic apprenticeship. It's kind of encouraged, not necessarily recommended. We also had some participants who would come to the jungle and, they bought the ingredients and brewed it up in their kitchen and, nearly died, but had a life-changing experience. I still wouldn't recommend it. It's like psychedelics for me, it's a sacred space. They should always be treated with reverence because you're messing with your brain. Even if you don't enter in the idea of the spirit realm, you're messing with your brain and, doing your research, making sure that, you don't have psychological issues running through your family, because psychotic breaks can really happen. And so making sure you kind of know the medical history of sort of all of your fairly close relations, including uncles, aunts, and a couple of generations back, is really, really important. But I would always recommend, making sure you're safe primarily, and that would be doing it with someone who's a sitter, who's responsible, who has experience. But it can be really amazing when you know that there's just you and you can really let go. If you're someone who really struggles opening up, it can be amazing because you've got time and space, rather than someone who's just off their box going, hey, 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 hey. That's the other side of, someone else in the space who's not not taking it seriously or doing it in the way that you would want to be doing it. And that's the other thing. What do you want to get from your trip? If you're just messing around, go out into nature, again, with friends, with family. But, I would always say, do it with reverence, because it's actually quite a big thing, as much as it can be fun and it can be amazing. Like, it's really important to be safe.
Yeah, I totally agree. Group work is quite, I don't know. I've been to a few kind of group things for mushrooms and it's been fine. But I think I lean more towards, if you're going to work on something, have somebody sit for you on your own, or if it is a group of friends, everybody's got a room that they can go to once they come up, just because you're not completely gone. And maybe that's the trip where a lot of grief has to come out. And if you're with friends and you're all in the same room, you might just kind of limit that. So yeah, I think I'm quite into taking it seriously. So if it's not going to be serious, then I think then do mushrooms outside on a walk. I think you have such a different thing that if you're going to do it with friends, outside walking, but if you're going to do it inside, have your own room, but have one person at least who's there to just make sure that everyone's okay, everyone can be taken to the toilet and all of that kind of stuff.
We'll take one final question from Tom.
Yeah, I had a question about the more spiritual side of the presence of these different medicines and how they have widely reported sort of gendered energies to them. And that can vary for different people, or it can be remarkably consistent. So I understand with ayahuasca and the ceremonies that I've sat that it's understood to be a feminine presence, and the experience I had was accessing the feminine side of myself. With the San Pedro cactus, on the other hand, incredibly masculine in a very gentle way, and that too came out of myself. And I was wondering if both of you could speak to experiences of gender in these medicines themselves and how that can be healing for people.
So yeah, ayahuasca definitely feminine in my experience. I have had a few people in ceremony have masculine elements to it, but traditionally, and if you look at the shape of a vine, it's curvy, it's twisting. The way she teaches is quite serpent-like. She's a trickster. I can only assume the characterization came from the visions of the shamans, because they see spirits very physically, and they work with other plant allies as well, and some are very obviously masculine. You know, I've had one myself come in as a doctor, just march up to you, just like lay you down, slice you open and start pulling stuff out. You're like, okay, but male. And then I work with, who's Bobinzana, and you know, there's songs about her flowers look like pink eyelashes. They're gorgeous. And, you know, she is the most unconditional love, but in a very human, nurturing way. And so I think it's just qualities that these plants evoke and the way their spirits interact with us, that we sort of give them traditional gender archetypes, essentially, you know, the maternal or the masculine, you know, San Pedro as well. If you look at the cactus, it's upright with two arms. It's like very much a pillar, and quite phallic, and it has that strong, but it's a nurturing grandfather energy. You know, it's that wise old man rather than the stern father, but it can be. But that doesn't mean that ayahuasca can't be stern or quite intense. You know, it's like us. You know, we have both genders, you know, needing to embody both sides of that spectrum of just being able to evoke more masculine and feminine qualities. And I think these substances bring out those different archetypes when needed and present in the ways that are helpful to us.
Yeah, it's quite a good question, Matt, because I found definitely with Iboga, it definitely had a feeling of like my Ghanaian older uncles. You know, it was quite sort of straight and yeah, just kind of showed me stuff and was quite masculine and grown up in that way. But mushrooms, I find I can't place a gender on mushrooms at all. I found them to be quite playful sometimes. And then when I was being told to go up in the doses, they really changed and were a lot more hardline, instructional. And yeah, kind of like now if I'm going to take mushrooms, I have to have a shower before. I mean, the first time that happened, I was actually coming up and it was like, what the fuck? It's like, how dare you come to us unclean? Go and wash. I was like, shit, water, what's going to happen? And I had a shower. And then I thought, let me just quickly get into bed. And then the next voice was like, and you've got no clothes on, get out. Had to get up, put loads of clothes on. And yeah, definitely since then, mushrooms have been a lot more grown up with me. Really, really grown up. And I feel a bit like they were playful in the beginning to just kind of reel me in. And now they're showing me their real character. So now they're quite grown up. I don't know. I mean, do you find there's a gender with mushrooms?
No, unplayable.
Yeah.
All of them. Yes.
Yeah, weird.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you to our two speakers, Sophie and Akua. OPS is selling some merch at the back. We try to put all of our events on for free, so if you can support us by buying the merch, that'd be great. Also, please enjoy the drinks courtesy of the Femtech Society, and see you next time. Thank you.